Good evening, everyone. This is Anuradha Sant, your host for this webinar, which is presented by the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. The topic for today's webinar is 3 lenses for evaluating your coaching impact. And the objective for this webinar is that we, the participants, will understand and be able to apply 3 specific lenses to evaluate whether our coaching practice is making the impact we want. This is the gateway to being able to increase our revenue from our coaching practice. The goal is also so that the coaches will be able to understand the role of the ICF Core Competencies in delivering consistent, high-quality results in coaching engagements. The coaches will also learn to connect the ICF Core Competencies with outcome measurements that improve coaching impact and discover the most predictable and reliable measure of coaching impact in organizations. Let me introduce to you the speaker for today. He's none other than Joanthan Reitz. Joanthan Reitz is FLUXIFY's Director for Training and CEO. Joanthan holds the Master Certified Coach MCC credential via the International Coaching Federation. He's also the co-founder of the Team Coaching Global Alliance and a top-rated speaker in global coaching community. He wrote the book, Coaching Hacks, Simple Strategies to Make Every Conversation More Effective. Joanthan is a member of the faculty in the Weatherhead School of Management coaching program at Case Western Reserve University. Joanthan lives in Cleveland, Ohio with his wife, Joy, and daughter, Julia. A fun and inspiring fact about our speaker is that he's had 20 years of experience in broadcasting, interviewing 2 US presidents and stars like Frank Sinatra and Paul McCartney. He's also a former professional golfer. Having said that, Joanthan, a very warm welcome to you from ICF Mumbai and from our lovely global audience. With that, I turn the session over to you. And before I say that, as you are aware, we have received a lot of questions and answers to the initial questions Joanthan had posed. And the first one being, how do you know your coaching is working? So let's deep dive into it.
So I like the indication that there is, the client, something is changing for the client. I saw back a few, from Preeti Gupta, light bulb moment for the client. Or CN Murthy saying, when I feel a shift in the room, I know this is working. And I think those are important. But I want to start our conversation this morning by just wondering out loud with you if maybe we pay too close attention to moments like that in our coaching conversations. We coaches, we love those light bulb moments. We love those moments where all of a sudden something clicks into place for our client. We love having those conversations. All of us can, I'm going to speculate that all of us can think about a coaching question we've asked where all of a sudden the client felt the ground underneath them move and everything seemed different. Can you think of that? Can you bring to mind a moment like that from your coaching where you just plain and simple, you ask the perfect question for the moment? Can you think about that? Can you bring to mind a moment like that? Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to. Well, I got my Master Certified Coach credential a few years ago. And I worked really hard for it. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of it. As you can see, I put it on the wall behind me in all of these events that I go to. I'm very, very proud of it. One of the achievements in my life of which I am the most proud. But here's the thing: I don't tell real often. The recordings I sent in for my MCC, 2 of them, really good sessions, filled with those moments where I asked the questions that my client stepped back and said, "Whoa, that changes everything." But you know what? In reality, now I know this. My assessor doesn't know this. The ICF doesn't know this. No one knows this. Well, now the ICF Mumbai chapter will know this. No one knows that nothing happened from those coaching questions. Because my client, in both cases, 2 different clients, in both cases, they had these aha moments, and they really saw the world differently. In both cases, they didn't follow up on the action plan they made in that session. In one case, something else happened. The client had an emergency come up, and they just hadn't gotten to it yet. The next time we talked, 2 or 3 weeks later or a month later, we followed up. We started diving into the plan that they had made in the previous session, and they said, "You know what? This came up, and I just didn't get to it. I will, but I haven't gotten to it yet." And I went, "Okay, interesting. So the other client came back and said, "You know what? I realized maybe 2 days after our last session that the realization that I had actually wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was." And I thought to myself, "Okay, tell me more." And they walked through the situation, and they said, "What I realized I wasn't considering was this factor, this piece. And because of that, the aha moment I had wasn't actually that helpful." And I went, "Okay, what have you learned from this situation?" And they unpacked a couple of ideas. And yeah, I see a couple of comments here in the chat area here. Aha moments are highly overrated. Well, I'm not sure that's true. Aha moments are a lot of fun, but they're not the only thing that coaches can look for. They're not the only thing that's in front of us. Transforming or converting, yeah, from Mala, getting the aha moment to convert into committed action. Yeah, that's really the thing. So let's step back from that aha moment, because I agree with Sunita, who put in the chat area right now. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. The aha moment can be misleading sometimes. It can be like when you see a magic show. The magician wants you to look over here. You know why? It's because they're pulling the card or the thing they're trying to produce out of their pocket with this hand, but they want you looking over here. That's sometimes what aha moments do in that situation. And quite honestly, I feel like as a coach trainer, I've kind of done my students a disservice in some ways, because we focused so much on the aha moment and not enough on deliberate practice or very focused action steps or something along those lines. But even more critical to this is, let's think about why clients come to us. Why is it that people come to us? Nobody comes to us. Nobody. In the 25 years I've been coaching, I have never had a client come to me and say, "Joanthan, I just want to have some aha moments. I just want," or this is the one I love. This is the one I love. I've never once had a client come to me and say, "Joanthan, I just need to understand myself better. You know, Tashima and I were laughing in the green room before the event started. You know, do we ever actually understand ourselves? Do we ever really know ourselves? That's a topic for another webinar. We won't go into that today. But that's not why clients come to us in coaching conversations. Our clients don't come to us to have that moment where all of a sudden things fit together. The clients don't come to us to have that moment where all of a sudden they see the world differently. You know what they come to us for? They come to us because they've got a problem. There's something that needs to be solved. And everything around us has to be built in such a way that we solve that particular challenge. Now, if we can solve the problem and help the client come to a different understanding of themselves, now I think we've really done something. That's what coaches do that matter, but it can't be the other way around. We can't start by saying we've got to, build self-understanding. If I'm coaching Nimesh and we're working through this conversation, we can't start by saying, Nimesh, we're going to build your self-understanding, and that's the purpose of this coaching engagement. No, the reality is that something he's doing is probably causing a negative impact in some part of his work. We got to solve that first. And if we can build the deeper understanding of what's happening for that individual as we solve that problem, now we're doing something notable. And I would suggest to you it looks like this. Looks a little bit like this. At one part of the process, there's coach behavior. At the center of it all, though, is our ability to solve client problems. And then if alongside of that, we can build deeper self-understanding, we're then using our coaching behaviors for the central core problem. This part of the process, this part where we're solving the thing that matters most to the client. Then we're making the right stuff happen. First and foremost, we have to put our energy here on solving the challenge for the client, whatever it is. And our coaching skills should make that happen. Now, if we get meaningful light bulb moments where the client goes, oh, I see, I get it. This is what I'm discovering about myself. Great. That's what separates coaching from counseling or from consulting or from some of those other tools that lots of other people like to use and pay attention to as they move forward. So this is our foundation for evaluating our impact. Is just a reminder that first and foremost, clients come to us because there's something about their life or their work or the combination of their life and their work that just isn't going the way that they want. And our coaching skills should be designed, should be built, should be focused. That's probably even a better way to say it. Our coaching skills should be focused first and foremost on addressing that. Now, I'll give you an example from my own coaching, and then we'll talk about a little bit of what this might look like. This is my client Bill. You may have seen I coached him in a very public demonstration on the WBEX Summit back in June. Then again a couple of weeks ago. Bill and I have an ongoing coaching engagement. We've now had 8 sessions in the course of our ongoing coaching work. He's made a tremendous amount of progress. Um, ironically enough, in the middle of all of this, he also set himself on fire, which is a whole nother conversation. It's just one of those things that shows up for leaders sometimes, unexpected circumstances. So Bill, as has been working, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this leadership challenge," and it was really interesting. It was really interesting as he was telling me about this leadership challenge. And maybe you've seen this demo. You can see this the first session from this engagement on my website if you want to go there, jonthanreitz.com. I can put that in the chat area at the end of the session if that'd be helpful. So that you can see this conversation there. It's sitting there on the website. He came to me because he had a leadership challenge, and it was interesting. The big challenge that he had was he was wrestling with getting people to buy into the vision of his organization. And in that first conversation, or the first couple of conversations, his language changed. His language changed from the people I work with, those people, you, they, them, to I need to be thinking differently. I need to be working differently. And after about our third conversation, I asked him if he had noticed that had changed. And he went, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." I had a tremendous realization in this conversation, or in the course of these last couple of conversations, that I was trying to be the puppet master. I was trying to control and direct all the people I work with, rather than inviting them into what we were trying to accomplish, and helping them discover how they could make a contribution to the things we were working on. And I had a huge mindset shift. I said, "Great. How do you think that is impacting the progress we're making?" And he went, "Oh, dramatically, completely, totally, 100% dramatically." And he gave some specific examples, connecting his change to solving his problem. The problem was not that Bill was a bad leader. The problem was he wasn't functioning in a way that led to the results that he had in mind. And we had to begin to solve that before he could have a discovery of what was going on with him. If I'd have tried to go into, "Hey, Bill, tell me about your leadership identity," or what is it about how you perceive yourself as a leader that you might want to explore, it would have never worked. It would have never gone anywhere. But because we started with that problem solving mentality, it set the stage for diving into what was actually happening for Bill, and it opened up some different conversations. So here's the big takeaway I have from that is there are some simple, easy questions, and this will set the stage for the rest of our conversation. There are some simple, easy questions that you can use to evaluate your coaching, first and foremost from a problem-solving mindset, and then in a self-discovery kind of mindset for your client. So here's the first layer of evaluating your coaching. Number one, how satisfied is the client? Now what does that tell you? That tells you first and foremost, does the client believe they're getting what they wanted? And remember, why do clients come to us? They don't come to us to build self-awareness, at least not right out of the gate. Eventually they do, but they've got a problem. Are they happy with the solution they're developing? So I would urge you to start with how satisfied is the client. Secondly, how much progress toward the goals of the coaching engagement is the client making? We're going to dive into this one a little bit more coming up in a few minutes. How satisfied is the client? How much progress are they making? And that's the first level. That's the surface of getting a sense of, hey, is this actually working? Then finally, this is one that I do after the fact. I spend some time after the fact. How did I do against my chosen competency map? You know, am I actually delivering the things that I said I would deliver in my coaching practice moving forward? You know, am I making a really good coaching agreement? Am I nailing down the thing that matters most for the client? And are we actually solving the problem that the client has in mind in this conversation? Are we making a difference in the life of the client based on these three questions? So I'm going to pull the slides down now, just long enough to give you a moment to clear your mental cache. You know how this works in your computer? Sometimes you have to clear the short-term memory that's in your computer because it slows things down. I want to do the same thing for you mentally at the moment. So what I'd like to invite you to do in the chat area, and Tushima, I'm hoping that you'll help me with this. I want to give you just a moment here. What have you heard so far that you want to be sure to remember? We're setting the stage for the three lenses, but what have you heard so far that you want to be sure to remember? Could be anything. You know, throw that in the chat area here. She'll throw that in the chat area. So what are we seeing, Tushima?
Solving the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We forget that, don't we?
Yeah. First, solve the problem. Let's fix things first. Okay. Are we helping the client? Keeping in mind, why did the client come to us in the first place?
Yeah.
How satisfied is the client? Don't get swayed by the aha moments. That's an aha moment.
That is an aha moment, isn't it? You know, it's so easy. They're so addictive, those aha moments, aren't they? Because let's be honest, they're fun. It's so fun to have that moment where the client goes, oh. It's so fun, but it's not always helpful.
Yeah.
It's not
goal-oriented, a focus on personal as well as work.
Oh, that's good.
Client satisfaction, yes. Getting to the core problem.
Yeah.
Helping the client. Remembering my chosen competencies while solving the problem. Yes. And adapting coaching skills. Reflection. Oh, wow. Great takeaways so far.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. These are good. These are good.
Yes. Recalling the purpose of our connect. What is the immediate concern of the client?
Oh, okay.
Coaching the problem before coaching on self-discovery.
Very good. Very good. I do like Alma's comment here, but what about the famous phrase, coach the person, not the problem?
Yeah.
I would say to you that that's a true statement, but it's not quite that simple. In reality, I really wish, no, I love Marsha Reynolds. She's a friend of mine. She's the one who really says, coach the person, not the problem, all the time. Every time I see her, I say, stop saying that, because it's, I would argue it's not quite that simple. Now, I'm going to put something in the chat area that I'm going to step just off. Tushima, give me your permission here. May I step off our chosen topic for 1 minute?
Yes,
Can
you
I
have
take
my permission.
All right, thank you, Tashima. I appreciate that. I'm going to take a tangent. Maybe I should ask Nimesh and Anuradha as well. I'm going to take a.
Granted.
Okay, good. I'm going to take a tangent off our chosen topic just for literally 1 minute, and I'm going to put something in the chat area here for everyone. I would suggest to you that this is a better way to think about that whole coach the person, not the problem idea. First of all, yes, coach the person when that's appropriate. But you know what? You don't always have permission to coach the person. Now, coaching the person means it's not one size fits all. You can't start there. It's not. Psychology and sociology teaches us that you can't start there. It's great to have the intention to start there. It's just not how human relationships work. I realize CTI teaches that. I realize that. And well, they don't really like me because I differ with them on this particular topic. But we're friends here, so we can talk about this at least for a moment. Okay, it's going to be 2 minutes. I'm not going to be able to do it in 1 minute. It's hard to start with enough relationship, with enough connection to really have a personal connection and to therefore coach the person. Now, I do think, and I completely agree, that's the destination at which we should seek to arrive, where when you think about the competency of cultivating trust and safety, I have to be able to trust my client to the point that I can ask any question that seems appropriate to me. That's a helpful way to think about what it means to see trust, cultivate trust with your client. Can I ask any question that seems appropriate to me? Now, the client feels safe in the engagement if they're willing to answer those questions. Now, it's two different things, right? Let's be honest. It's two different things to ask a hard question and to know that your client is going to answer the hard question. Completely different things. That's why the competency is written the way it is. Cultivates trust and safety. Trust means the coach can go there. Safety means the client comes along. No coaching engagement starts there. So coach the person is a destination. Is a destination to, you have to build this over time. So yes, I fully agree. Work as hard as you can. I'm getting all worked up. Sorry about this. I fully agree. You work to build the relationship so that you can serve the client in a way that you can't serve the client later on. But nobody starts there. It's just not how it works. I would love I would love to start every coaching engagement at like the 7th session. Because stuff's on the, all the topics are on the table then, right? Right? You've got the connection, you've built it, you've built back and forth with your client, and all the topics are on the table. Now you're getting somewhere. But they don't start like that. So coach the person. Now, I would suggest to you, and this will set up the first lens for evaluating your coaching quite beautifully, by the way. I wish I would have thought of this when I was putting this together to do this way. Consult the problem doesn't mean tell the client what to do. It means when you have a moment of insight, throw it out there for the client's consideration, which, by the way, the competencies say you can do. We are allowed to offer insight, to offer wisdom, to offer something from our experience in the course of a coaching conversation. That's okay, as long as when I put on my assessor hat, because I am an ICF assessor. When I put on my assessor hat, I will never. You can take me to the bank on this. I will never penalize a student in a recording when I hear them offer something, as long as they follow these 3 rules, these 3 guidelines. Number 1, the client has to ultimately decide if what the coach offers is helpful. So if I'm coaching Anuradha and I say, I observed this, and she goes, oh, that's not helpful, I don't get to say, well, think about it like this. I don't get to push to nudge toward that. She goes, yeah, thank you for offering that, but not helpful. Great, move on. Next up. So guideline number 2 is the client has to decide what it means. So I don't get to say to my client, here's something you should consider, and here's why it's important to you. Here's what it means. Here's what it should mean to you. I don't get to do that. That's not how it works. And then I certainly don't get to tell my client, here's what you need to do with this. Let me know when you're done. It's not how it works. Not how it goes. Not what happens there. But throw it out across those processes. Now, to Arvin's comment in the chat area, all coaching schools, all but one, because I can think of one that doesn't, seem to suggest it's almost unholy to use words like consult, mentor, or counsel. Well, come to training at my school. Shameless plug. I agree. Well, I agree. Coaching schools do point that way. But this is one of the things that is challenging for us as coaches, as a developing industry, because the thing that made us different in the early days of coaching was the fact that we had a neutral presence, was the fact that we exclusively focused on drawing out of our clients, the fact that we only asked questions and we never made suggestions. If you read the earlier editions of coactive coaching, the book Coactive Coaching, the Whitworth, Kimsey, House, and Sandall. It's the one that started it all in the coaching world. It's been out about 30 years. Or Coaching for Performance, the one that introduced the GROW model. Those 2 books came out in the early 1990s, and they were very clear that the coach never makes a suggestion, never offers anything, only asks questions and just listens. And by the way, the later version, the versions that have come out in the last 5 or so years, have changed this. It doesn't say this anymore, but it did say it in the original versions. And because here's the problem. Neutral presence, yes. Yes, Rajesh throws out neutral presence. Yes, here's the problem. It doesn't work. Nothing serious. It just doesn't work. The reality is that human beings, sociology teaches us that human beings cannot offer a neutral presence. We can't do it. We're not capable of it. Because in every relation, now this is controversial, I realize, and I will bring it back to the 3 lenses. I promise you. Sociology teaches us that no matter what happens, human beings, a little bit of us rubs off on every person we have contact with, we have relationship with. And I'm not just talking like in a pandemic. I'm talking generally speaking. When I have a conversation with Tashima, I leave a little bit of me with her. She leaves a little bit of her with me. That's what human connection is all about. So if it can't be true that we leave a little bit of ourselves with the people we connect with, it can't be both true that we leave a little bit of ourselves with each other, and we have a neutral presence. It's not possible. They both can't exist. So I would suggest to you then that requires a much more nuanced understanding of our coaching presence and what that means for how we show up. Now, I'd also suggest that that means we have a much better opportunity to each be a unique coach. So I would see that Arvind would be a different coach than I would. Tushima would be a different coach than Sherpad would. That all of these opportunities, all of these situations mean that exploring who we are as individuals makes a huge difference in understanding how we show up as coaches. All right, so Tushima, let's pause here. Like I said, I didn't plan to go here. I hope that was okay. I hope I hope you had a light bulb moment just to tie it all together in the course of all this. What are folks saying in the chat area?
Joanthan, the chat box is on fire.
Good.
Okay,
So what are we seeing here?
There are some different points of view. I think one of the earlier comments shared by Preeti was really great. She said, yeah, coach the person, but meet the client where they are.
Yes, that's a really good way to say it.
Yeah.
Really good way to say it.
Yeah. And there are a lot of coaches who are talking about, having a reality check and really doing what is required for us to be in the service of the client. There are also some coaches who have rightly pointed out that it does seem slightly risky when we go in with this mindset. So I'm curious, Joanthan, what do you say to that?
I agree. I think it is slightly risky, but the challenge with neutral presence. Well, there's two challenges. There's two big challenges. We already covered one of them, and that is that our interaction with other people. If we're really going to create trust and safety, we have to offer a little bit of ourselves to that other person. That's how interaction happens, right? So neutral presence. First of all, I don't believe we're capable of that as human beings. If you really want a truly neutral presence, I hate to tell you this, but there's a lot of artificial intelligence coaches that are almost as good as you and me. Almost, not quite. They'll probably be as good as you and I are in some areas in the next couple of years. The ICF is studying this right now. I know, I'm on the task force. And the AI coaching world, that's a whole new thing. That has a neutral presence. So other than that, but people, I just don't think are capable of it. Now, the other thing we've touched on as well, and that is that I just don't think clients come to us for that. And that's an issue as well, right? That we want to give the clients what they're looking for. And anytime we commit to serving the clients on the client's terms, there is a risk involved in that, without a doubt. There is a risk involved in saying, you know what, I'm going to throw out my observation. You may hate what I have to say. I guess you could argue I'm taking a little bit of a risk right now in throwing this out to 150 of my new friends from ICF Mumbai. I guess that's a little bit of a risk. It is very different to. I'm sorry. It is very challenging to really show up in your coaching conversations as, Joanthan, who happens to be a coach. Wherever I go, I bring all the good and bad points of me along with me. And I would rather show up in coaching conversations as that guy, as opposed to a guy who's learned to put on a coach face, a coaching mask to behave in particular ways for a client. That's like I don't like coaching jargon as a result of that. I don't like coaching jargon that nudges the client, that nudges the coach away from being who they actually are. So I would say, I'll give you an example. You will probably never hear me in a coaching session say, I'm just going to hold space for you. You know why? That's not how I talk normally. I don't want to say anything in a coaching conversation that isn't a part of my normal conversation. That isn't a part of the normal way I talk. And that's just not something I would say. It's not something I would say. Some coaches do a lot of breathing exercises, do a lot of, centering. I don't do a lot of that with my client. You know why? Not how I talk. It's not what I do. Now, I do have a centering ritual that I do before coaching sessions, but it's personal for me. In fact, I did it before I jumped on this webinar. Even though I was out of bed, 30 minutes before I came down to my office to deliver this webinar to you. But I did my centering ritual when I sat down to get myself ready for this webinar. It's a personal thing. It's not something that I want to insist that my clients also engage around. And so that's something that, I want to be as much of Joanthan as I can be to serve my clients and to go down that road. And Arvin's comment here in the chat area is also very helpful. That's a really important one. Lots of clients don't understand this coaching jargon. Right. Right. That's the other thing that we really wrestle with is I don't want to talk in a way that my clients don't understand. Toshima, I see you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, there was a question that came in earlier. Joanthan, I think there was a term that you used, chosen coaching competency map.
Well, I'm so glad you asked about that, because
we have a couple of questions on that.
Well, that takes us directly back to the first lens that we can use for our coaching conversations, for our coaching evaluations. So that is a perfect segue back into where this webinar is intended to go. Now, all this to say, I appreciate you giving me the hook to head back to our roadmap for today. Throw the timing out the window. Yeah, everyone look at Anharada's face going, oh, the timing. So all this to say that every coach who evaluates impact, in my opinion, has to separate the impact, the evaluation into two specific lenses. Now, I would say to you, the thing that gets us paid, the things that gets us hired and hopefully rehired, are the results that we generate for our clients. The things that we do for ourselves, for our personal development, are in a slightly different camp. And the first lens to evaluate your coaching effectiveness, especially in light of all of these things we've been talking about for the last 15 or 20 minutes, about understanding coaching the person, mentoring the experience when you've got some experience that might be helpful. Think about counseling the fallout. If something goes sideways, the best thing you can do as a coach is not ask a whole bunch of other questions, but to be human with them, to be personal with them, and commiserate that, that didn't go according to plan. How do you feel about that? Well, it's okay to say, I'm really sorry you're having that experience. What are you learning? To be human and connected. That's what it means. That's really what it means to coach the person. Is when something goes sideways, you're able to say, oh, wow, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with that. what are you going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Doesn't happen ever again. You know, those come to life under a competency map. In this case, the ICF competency map. Now, there's lots of others. There's lots of others. The EMCC has a competency map. The European Mentoring and Coaching Council, they have a competency map. The World Association of Business Coaches, WABC, has a competency map. The Association of Coaches have a competency map. We care about, we being ICF members, one of the things we say in the Code of Ethics is that we will do our best to coach according to the ICF competency map. So that is lens number one to evaluate our coaching outcomes, our coaching skills, is how are we doing on the competency maps that we're talking about. Now, I would suggest to you, I have an ICF credential. If you have an ICF credential, you know these competencies already. I'm in the process of applying for an EMCC credential because I have a lot of clients in Europe. Now, I have realized that the competencies that the ICF challenges us to use are very consistent with the competencies that EMCC uses, but they're not identical. And they have some unique benefits. So I would say to you, evaluating your coach behavior for, I don't know what the heck is going on here. Evaluating your coach behavior against a competency map gives you a really good sense of what you are doing as a coach to help your clients solve their challenge or to develop their self-awareness. It gives you a really good roadmap. And you all know the ICF core competencies, these 8 sets of behavior. You know, I will tell you that I have stepped back from the ICF core competencies and have thrown out, I shouldn't say it like that, have developed specific behaviors for each of these 8 competencies that are my baseline. I took the ICF core competencies. You can download those off the ICF website. I also grabbed the PCC markers. It's the PCC markers, and got a build out a set of behavioral expectations, behavioral commitments that I wanted to make for the for each of my clients. And I want to affirm Daniel's comment in the chat area here. It's always best to lean toward or behave like an MCC, even if you're at the ACC level. I 100% agree with that. Aim to coach at the MCC level, even if your credential says ACC. And one of the things I would urge you to get in the habit of doing is listening to recordings of coaching, especially your coaching, as often as possible. The single best thing I did to develop my coaching, to begin to evaluate my coaching against the ICF core competencies, the single best thing I did was to decide 14 years ago to record every session, no matter what, and to evaluate 1 to 3 sessions of my own coaching every month. And I've done that for 10 plus years. That's, if you don't mind me saying, hopefully this will be okay. I'm a pretty good coach. I know what I'm doing, I think. The reason I have that confidence is because I literally record every session. In fact, I won't take a client that won't let me record them. And I review those sessions monthly, looking for specific ways to bring the ICF core competencies to life. Let me give you an example of one of the things I look for. This is one of the things I look for on the idea of establishes and maintains agreements, which, by the way, this is a pretty important competency if you want to get results for your clients, right? You've got to develop really meaningful coaching agreements. So as I look through lens number one, how did I do against the ICF Core Competencies? I evaluate every coaching agreement I make using this little acronym, TOMS. If you don't remember anything else from today's webinar, please remember this. Please remember this. The coaching agreement is 4 things. First of all, it's a topic. So if I'm coaching Nimesh, I might say, what do you want to talk about today? And he'll say, well, I've got this on my mind. I've got this going on. Here we go. This, that, and the other thing. All right. So that's the topic number 1. Section number 2 of the coaching agreement, the outcome. What will you have when we're done? In theory, that you don't have right now. That's one of the other things I look for is, are we nudging the client toward new behavior? The M, measurement. How will we know you've got what you want? Another way to say that might be, how are we going to know if we've succeeded? Or what will tell you this is critical? And then the last one, the S. This is the one that new coaches miss more than anything else. It's the starting point. And I would urge every single one of you in your coaching to begin to remove the word let's, L-E-T-S. Let's talk about this. No, don't say that. Replace that with, where do we start? Because you are then 100% empowering the client to set the direction for where you're going. These are the kinds of behaviors. These are the kinds of behaviors that you can connect to your core competency. Now, this is only one of them. I've got one for every. I've got several for every competency that I look for in my own coaching. Now, somebody might be saying, "No, that sounds like it's a formula." No, because not every situation applies. It's not universal. Yeah, TOMS, T-O-M-S, topic, outcome, measurement, starting point. Starting point. Those are the pieces of a coaching agreement. And you can develop those tools to evaluate your own coaching. That's what I mean by evaluating against a competency map. We're using the ICF Core Competencies today because we're ICF coaches. You can do a similar thing with the EMCC coaches or with an EMCC competencies or with, World Association of Business Coaches or, what have you. There's lots of ways to evaluate that, is your coaching behavior serving your client? And that I would urge you to start there no matter what. Do I have a problem-solving mentality? Am I coming to serve my clients so that they make progress on their challenge? And is my coaching behavior supporting that? So I want to invite you into a breakout room right now. We're going to put you into a breakout room. We're going to give you about 10 minutes to take a deep breath and to let it out and to talk about, hey, in my coaching, here's my challenge for you. Here's what I want to put in front of you. I want you to think about the ICF Core Competencies and your coaching. And I want you to take a minute to say, what am I doing well in terms of the core competencies? And what am I not, maybe what needs some work, what needs some attention? What am I doing well? What needs some attention? So Nimesh, can we put folks into breakouts for
Can we take a couple of questions before that related to
Sure,
what was
sure.
just discussed? Okay. What's the difference between topic and starting point?
The topic is the client saying, "Hey, I want to talk about why my staff isn't performing as well as I want." That's an example. Starting point would mean this, I think, is where we begin to explore this conversation. So topic is a big, broad overview. Starting point is something specific that initiates the conversation.
Okay, thanks. And the second question is this. So I think the TOMS acronym has been a big hit with the group. Do you have an acronym like this for every competency?
No, I don't have an acronym for every competency, but I do have some tools that I've developed for every single competency. You'll just have to invite me back to talk about some of the tools for other competencies in the future. Although I do have, we are going to do one more later on in the webinar.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's go to breakout.
I am a recovering consultant. You know, all things being, I would rather tell you what I think you should do than draw out of you what you think you should do. But I've learned the hard way that it doesn't work. My solutions, as good as I think they are, really don't tend to serve my client as well as I think they will. You know why? What? I'm embarrassed it took me 20 years of coaching to realize this, but it's true. What I'm about to say is true. The thing. Thanks, Daniel. Daniel says, "Me too. I'm still a consultant." Yeah, I understand. I feel your pain. The reality is, at least for me, the reality is that I have to acknowledge I don't know my client's situation. Who knows your client's situation better, you or them? I'll give you a hint. It ain't you. So really, no matter what you think, you don't know the situation as well as your client does. I wish I could tell you it was different, but it's not. So that's the opportunity that I think we have in front of us, is to just acknowledge, is to say, you know what, in no uncertain terms, bottom line, my client knows what they're facing a million times better than I know. And I hate admitting that. It drives me crazy to admit that. But it's just true. It just is. It's just the reality. The client knows better. Client knows better. So that will serve you well if you can take that seriously. All right, let's change our conversation. Let's go to the second lens for evaluating effectiveness, because I promised you 3 lenses. I'm only giving you one. We're an hour and 15 minutes into the webinar. I'm only giving you one webinar. I'm only giving you one lens. So we got 2 more to go. So lens number 2 it builds exactly on that situation. It's client satisfaction and outcome. Hang on a second here. There you go. I want you to see the pretty animation, so I ran it again. Client satisfaction and outcomes. You know, I will give you another one of the behavioral prompts that I think is critical for coaching at the highest possible level with this lens. Now, the powerful piece of client satisfaction and outcomes really is solely and only rooted in that 8th ICF core competency. Do you know how competency number 8 reads? It talks about transforming learning into action. I would suggest to you that it's just as important to transform action into learning. And the fact that we can do both is one of the things that separates us coaches from other professions. You know, action is what solves problems. learning is what changes clients so that they end up doing things differently forever because they worked with you, because they engaged with you in a coaching conversation. So have you ever seen one of these things where, you know, these balls that hang on the strings, and you start one and it bounces and the energy transfers through and it comes out the other side, and then it swings back and it comes. This is called a Newton's cradle. If you go to YouTube and you Google, or you go to YouTube or Google or something like that, and you look for a video of this. If you've never seen one of these, you can check this out. It's supposed to just preserve the potential energy that's in the thing, and it just swings back and forth. And, you know, the red ball, as it swings toward the others, the energy transfers through the others, and the ball on the end swings up, and it's just a little it's a little distraction. And sometimes you see those on executives' desks. They're an interesting little decoration. But I think the lesson here is perpetual energy is what it's designed to be about. Potential energy is, it'll go longer the higher you start the first ball swinging toward it. I think this is a good metaphor for what a coaching relationship centered on client outcomes, client progress, client satisfaction is really about. Because there is a difference between evaluating your coach performance and evaluating the progress that the client receives moving forward. And, this is one of those situations that the ICF Core Competencies only focus on coach performance, coach behavior. You know why? Because it's the International Coaching Federation. It's not the International Client Federation. So it only focuses on the things that we coaches do to be effective in those coaching engagements. But for your coaching engagements to really work, you've got to have a clear picture of, hey, what outcomes is my client pursuing, and how are we making progress toward that vision? In fact, let's call it that. In fact, I want to challenge you that nailing down coach outcomes starts, first of all, with encouraging your client to have a picture of the vision at which they are working, toward which they are working. In fact, you can I would urge you to check out a book called Helping People Change. It's by Richard Boyatzis, Melvin Smith, and Ellen Van Osten. Helping People Change. Now I'm going to summarize the first half of the book for you right now in about 3 sentences. They say flat out, the best possible strategy for coaching people toward change is to help them speak the vision they have for their lives, for what comes next. Now, neurologically, that's a very important strategy, because our vision, what we see in front of us, becomes much more real when we start pushing the words out of our mouths. Because here's what happens. An idea doesn't actually exist in our brains, in our minds, until our brain puts words to it. So I'll give you an example. I wanted to be an MCC. I thought about earning my MCC in my head for probably 2 years before I told anybody. I had these words in my head, and that became part of the vision. It became part of the vision. But you know when I started making progress toward it? When I told somebody. When I not only had the words in my head, but I started pushing them out of my mouth. Because there's 2 different neurological processes that go on there that reinforce our commitment. Both of them reinforce our commitment. So I would challenge you to say that thinking through what you want to accomplish, what your vision is great. Talking about it to someone else and being as detailed as possible is a whole nother level. And writing it down is another level beyond that even still. And writing it down like by hand, not typing it, writing it by hand actually takes more brain power than typing. So writing down something by hand is actually pretty powerful. In fact, I drive my students crazy in our coach training school because there are some assignments that we only accept if you handwrite them. You got to handwrite them and scan them to us. They're like, oh, who's got paper? Well, exactly. But that's a neurological idea that we reinforce the vision that we're pursuing. And Boyatzis and Van Oosten and Smith argue that the likelihood of achieving your client's results or working with a client that achieves their results goes up 300% if they have a written down vision that they've discussed with someone else. So this is one critical component of measuring client impact is they've got to tell you what they're aiming for. Yes, perfect. There's the Helping People Change book link. Thanks, Timothy. I highly recommend it. Okay, and shameless plug, Ellen Van Oosten, who is one of the co-authors, she was my student. So I'm very proud of her. She didn't need any help from me at all. You know, I learned more from her than she learned from me because she's freaking brilliant. But that book will change how you think about coaching. Get the vision in front of it, because then you and your client can say on a consistent, regular basis, how much closer are you? How are you making progress? That's tangibly measuring your impact moving forward, saying, we started here, the vision is over here. Oh, look, now we're getting closer. And looking toward the client's vision is very powerful. Yvonne Hirata is saying, you know, I have this vision, and here is how I'm closer based on this conversation. That is a meaningful engagement in your coaching. Now, it's similar, but also related to the other perspective, which is turning around and looking back at where you started. It's saying, hey, look, when we started our coaching engagement, we were all the way back there. Look how far we've come. That's also a critical component, critical way to measure client progress. Do you see how they're different? To saying, hey, I've got this vision and I'm moving closer. That's one lens. Turning around and looking back and saying, remember when we started, we were way back there. That's a slightly different perspective. Very important, very helpful to put those side by side and to say, you know what are you learning about the challenge that you're facing? You know, how is your progress helping you solve the problem in front of you or solve the opportunity in front of you? You know, what are you learning about yourself? Becomes that second conversation. Remember, we're solving problems at the center of it all, but we're also helping them make discoveries about what's most important to them. And that strategy for this is one of my tricks, is when I evaluate how I'm supporting the client to choose what happens in the session straight out of the PCC markers. One of the things I do is I'll invite them to say, tell me about your vision. How are you getting closer? moving forward. Okay, now turn around. When we started, where were you and how are things different? How are things different? This is another lens that you can use to break down whether or not you're making progress in your coaching conversations. Now, this one is shockingly simple. I mean, isn't it? I mean, right? This is incredibly simple. To, on the one hand, say, oh, wow, look, I'm getting closer to my goal. But on the other hand, it's very different to say, back when we started, we were all the way back there. Now, one of the images that I use along those lines is I'm very proud of my daughter. She'll be 20 in a couple of weeks. And she's lost 82 pounds over the last year. The 82 pounds is what is that in kilograms? That's like 30 kilograms, isn't it? Or 32 kilograms, something like that. Which is a lot. It's a lot. And one of the things she does is yeah, kudos to her. Right on. One of the conversations we have is we'll say, okay, what's your goal? How much farther do you have to go? And she'll say, well, I want to weigh this, and that's 37 kilograms. Wow. Yeah, one of the I want to weigh this. This is my target weight. This is my goal weight. And she's like 2 kilograms from like 5 pounds, 2 kilograms from where she wants to be. And she's, I've only got this far to go. I've done most of the work, and I've only got this far to go. Great, love it. That's looking forward toward the vision. But she kept a shirt that she used to wear, and she keeps it down in the bottom drawer of her dresser. And every once in a while, when she's not feeling as good about where she is, she pulls that out and she looks at just the sheer size of this thing. That's turning around and looking back at where you started. Both evaluations of progress are helpful. And you do have a great opportunity to invite your clients to think a little bit differently about how they're viewing their progress. This is especially important when you involve the client and their stakeholders. Because sometimes when you talk to the client and their boss, you have to take the vision approach. Or sometimes when the client is speaking to their boss, you have to say, hey, look, our goal is this, we're making progress, here's the forward momentum we've got going. That's often the only thing the boss cares about, right? Now, when you talk to your direct reports or a peer, it can be much more helpful to look back and say, hey, remember when our team used to function like this? What have we learned now that we function this way? That's a very different strategy when you're working with different people. And it's important to include, it's meaningful to include all three of those different perspectives, because like Marshall Goldsmith and Sal Sylvester say, there's a gap between when your client changes and when the people around your client notice that the client is doing things differently. There's a time lag. So the client might say, look, we've made all this progress, but that doesn't mean the people around them are going to be able to say, Honorata, I see that you really are doing things differently. You have to do things differently for a while in some cases before people notice. So including that gap in understanding the outcomes that your client is generating is a really important piece of the puzzle. So client progress, two different perspectives, and helping your clients understand that, feedback from the people around you can very definitely nudge the client toward future success, future movement, in a way that other opportunities can't. All right. So I want to invite you to think about now, how are you helping the client name the vision or name the progress they want to make, and then measure how they're doing getting closer. We're going to put you back into breakouts. This time they're going to be a little bit smaller, I think, right, Nimesh?
Yes.
So we'll put you into breakouts, a little bit smaller group for a little bit shorter period of time. And the challenge is to think about, how is it that you help your client make observable progress toward their goal? And how do you stay on top of that? So take it away, Nimesh.
Sure.
Good to see you all. All right, welcome back.
Yes, everybody's back here.
Excellent. Welcome back. We're making our way in. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. All right. So in the chat area, just very quickly, what is the hardest part for you about keeping the focus on client outcomes? Just a single sentence. What is the hardest part? Remembering and reminding the client where the client started and where they reached. Yeah. I think that can be a good challenge, can't it? That can be a good challenge, can't it? Tashima, do you want to jump in with some of these?
Okay, so Tashima, so I'm filling in for her. So when client is too talkative and tells stories for everything. When the client keeps shifting the goalpost. New problems arise, old story versus new story.
Yes.
After 8 sessions, the client might not remember. Sorry, it went so fast.
Yeah,
Remember
that's what Shripad
the
wrote.
coaching program goals.
The client, they could not remember the goals after 8 sessions.
Okay, Toshima is back.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello,
Okay.
Tashima.
All
Yeah,
right, over to you.
This is why written contracts are so critical. Written agreements are so critical. Is putting the goals for the engagement. The way we talk about this in coach training in our school is to say, you need that needs to be written down for when things go sideways between you and your client, not if, when. Because if you're inviting the client to really truly change, the potential that that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for the client is real. So I personally like having a piece of paper or a digital document, because I don't know if you remember paper, but in the old days, there was this substance that you could take. This is called a pencil or a pen, and you could actually make marks on this thing called paper. So thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that. In the old days, you could do that. Now, a digital contract is also very helpful, but having that written down so that you can bring that out when the client says, I don't remember what the original goal was. Well, let's go to our contract. Let's go to our agreement. Gaurang, thank you. Trying to use humor as a teaching tool. It's not always an easy thing. So I probably overdo the documentation at the beginning of the session, just in case. So Tashima, how about 1 or 2 more, and then we'll go to the third lens.
Yeah, and there's a reality check from Preeti, who says a pain point is that, let's say after 3 sessions, the client says, I got what I needed, and then the client is gone. They don't want to do any more sessions.
Yeah. Preeti, I feel your pain. And I think one of the challenges there is we have an opportunity to learn to think about the situation slightly differently. One of the things that I do is I used to try to start everybody with a 1-year commitment. I used to want to work with clients for 1 year, 12 months, maybe 12 sessions, maybe 18 sessions in a year. I don't do that anymore because of situations like what Preeti is describing. Now, everybody starts with 5 sessions. They commit to 5 sessions in 100 days. And I say that very clearly, 5 sessions in 100 days. And what that does is there's only 3 outcomes for that kind of engagement. Outcome number 1 is we solve the client's challenge and they're like, oh, Joanthan, that was great. So glad we did this. So glad we did this. Can we continue? And then it's very easy to get a longer commitment, and you know what you're getting into. I've had people after 5 sessions commit to a 7-year engagement. And the best part was they paid for it up front. So 7 years, and then I sent them an invoice, paid for it. The second outcome is they go, you know what? Perfect, Joanthan. This is great. Solve my problem. Thanks. So we're done. Successful engagement, but we're done. But you know what I've noticed about those people is they come back. There's a break and they come back a little while longer, and maybe they do 5 more sessions. Maybe they commit for a year. There's just a break in the middle of that. So one of the challenges I would put in front of you as a coach is to think about your coaching offers, not to get hired, but as a way to get rehired, because that's what builds coaching practices. When you have a system that doesn't just get you hired, but it gets you rehired as well. Now, the third outcome is that situation where you and that client didn't really click, or maybe it didn't work. Well, anybody can do 5 sessions, right? I know this will be hard for you to believe, but not everybody likes me. I'm not the ideal coach for every client. So after 2, 3, 4 sessions, sometimes I'll say, you know what, let's have our last session. But I suspect there are coaches who would be a better fit for you, and I'd like to help you find that person. I remember a long time ago, this was a long time ago, because I've gotten better at picking out these people ahead of time and not taking them on as clients if I don't have to. But I remember, back in the old days, I don't know if you remember this or not, but in the old days, phones used to have cords, and you used to have to hang them up on the other part of the phone. The phone was 2-part. It wasn't just this. It was, oh, there's my daughter. There's my daughter and my wife. It wasn't just like this. It had a thing that you put up by your head, and then a cord, and you'd have to hang this up to end the call. And I remember in the old day, in this particular, so this tells you how long ago this was. This was a long time ago. I'm having the conversation. I'm talking to my client, and I'm hanging up the phone, and I'm thinking to myself, the phone is not even back in the cradle yet. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad that's over. And I realized, oh, this client and I are not a fit, and I am the problem. So in the next session, I said, you know what? I think there's probably coaches who would be a better fit for you. Can I help you find someone else? And they went, I worried about saying this because I thought they said, oh no, Joanthan, really, this is great. And they didn't say that. They were like, yeah, that'd be good. And so they knew. That's the thing I really realized is when you have that moment, you're not fooling anybody. Your client knows. Your client knows. So focus on that. Focus on getting that relationship right. Because of Preeti's comment, 3 out of 6 sessions, the opportunity you have there is to say, you know what? We nailed it. We got it done. We hit exactly the target at which we were aiming. Success. Now, I will also say to you that I would put in your agreements that if they don't use their 6 sessions in a fixed period of time, you're not going to hold them forever. So 5 sessions in 100 days, I give a grace period of another 100 days. So if you commit to a 5 session in 100 days, you've actually got 200 days to finish them. But we get to day 201 and that expires. That expires. All right, let's look at the third lens because we've got like 5 minutes left in our scheduled time.
Can we just take
3 minutes.
one more challenge?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So there's a very interesting one from Yanya. Extremely talkative clients who keep changing goals.
Oh, I love that one. Because as you can tell, I do not believe in using 100 words when 10,000 will do. So I am a verbal processor. Now to me, that's the question, is why is the client so talkative? Now, and in my experience, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is you just have the very social, extroverted clients that just oh, I'm so glad to see you. Glad to see you. You know those people. I find the extroverted, highly social client very difficult to coach. Very difficult. You know why? Because I'm extroverted and relatively social, and it just doesn't work real well. The other reason clients are talkative is verbal processors. And I am actually an introvert. I refresh, introverted, extroverted isn't about how you communicate. It's about how you refresh your energy. And I refresh my energy by going off and being by myself, believe it or not. But I'm a verbal processor. I come to new conclusions, new ideas, new observations by talking with someone or talking in a webinar where I'm just talking to myself. And understanding that about your client changes the perspective, if you think about it. If you know that your client comes to new conclusions because they're talking through things, you can leverage that in your coaching conversation. If you've got the highly sociable person who's just flitting about from topic to topic, that's a much more difficult challenge. Now, what I do in that situation is I say flat out, you have changed the topic on us now several times. How would you like me to handle this? How much of the enforcer, do you want me to be the hammer and say, hey, that's not what you talked about. That's not what you said was important. Do you want me to do that? Because I will if you want me to do that. How would you like me to? Now, when you do that, it is crucially important, critically important to say to your client, to mention it to your client using their words. In fact, this is a webinar topic that I'm going to be working. I'm going to be working on this in 2022. Is strategies for the coach to take on the client's language as opposed to the other direction. Because I would suggest to you that is one of the critical building blocks of client success is you taking on their language, not the other way around. So in this situation where the client's going all over the place, you have to be able to say to them, hey, this is what you've said. Now you're saying this. What should we do? I always want the client to make that choice, not me. Now, if the client is the verbal processor type where they're connecting the dots, they're making things happen and all the good things are coming to life as a result of that, that's a different strategy. That's one where I think it's important to vary your summary strategy. Sometimes you summarize, sometimes you ask them to summarize, sometimes you have them go back over ground. That's a whole nother topic for another webinar. So you have to have me come back. We can talk about that at that point. But in that situation, you're trying to encourage the client processing because they're coming to new realizations, new discoveries. In the other situation where they're all over the place, you're trying to limit client processing because it's not serving the coaching conversation. And that would be the wrinkle that I would throw out to you along those lines. All right, now last lens. Let me share my screen. We're gonna go to our last lens. We're gonna Honorado, we're gonna run 4 minutes over. And we're not going to do the third breakout session because Joanthan talked too much. So I apologize for that. So let me share my screen here. Third lens. Third way to determine whether or not you're effective in your coaching conversations is evaluating, did your client pick up any coaching skills from you? Let me just tell you a quick story about a specific client that this just happened to me last week. This is a brand new story that I've not ever told this in a public situation. I was coaching one of my clients, and they had a very challenging meeting with a member of their team. And I said, so how are you going to handle that? And he kind of laughed, and he went, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what you do with me. I'm going to ask you what the ideal outcome is from the conversation. I'm going to ask my team member. I'm going to say, okay, what are your ideas for solving this situation? I'm going to say, when I hear them say, I think I'll do this, I'm going to say, I think I just heard you commit to something. And at the end, I'm going to make them recap all the ground we covered, you know, just like you do with me. And I went, perfect. My work is done here. So what's your goal here for this conversation? And he paused. He thought about it for a second. He said, really what I'm after in this conversation, the thing that I think would be most important to me from this conversation is I want to see progress toward these two goals, but I don't want to have to tell this person on my team what they're going to do. And you never tell me what to do, but we celebrate that we've come to new conclusions, new connections, that we've figured out a new way to move forward. And that's really what I want in this particular situation, is I want to see my team member. I want to see the person that I have in mind, or this person that I'm meeting with. I want to see them come up with their own strategy. That's great. So I would challenge you as a third lens to evaluating coaching outcomes. Ask yourself at the end of the engagement, or it's at the midpoint of the engagement on, because of the coaching, can your client do what you do, even a little bit? Because the transfer of coaching skills, I would suggest to you, is a tremendously powerful indication that you've made an impact on that client. So at least somebody in the room is saying, oh, Joanthan, I don't want to do that because I'll be out of a job then. No, you won't. Because the skills are easy to get your mind around, right? We all know this, right? They're easy to get your mind around, but they can be very difficult to master. So maybe the purpose of your coaching engagement will shift a little bit from solving that particular problem to the problem becoming, how does your client coach in more situations? And that's a powerful reality for us in which to live, for us and for our clients. Now, the power of this, in my opinion, is that I would argue, this is the thing I hope I'll leave with you as we wrap up here, is one of the main things a coach does is to use everything that we have to make life better for another person. absolutely everything we have, our skills, our training, our experience, our personality, our temperament, our communication, our hurts, our scar tissue, our woundedness, everything to make life better for another person. And if we're really, truly effective at that, what if the other person can then do that for someone else, and it trickles down and it trickles down and it trickles down? I am fully convinced and committed to the power of coaching to make the world a better place. I know that sounds lofty and dreamy and all of that, but I legit believe it. I legitimately believe it. This is one of the key pieces of making the world into the vision that all of us have for what's possible in humankind. And coaching, I would argue, is at the center of it. So that third lens, can your client coach? You know what that is? Very simply put, that's you helping your client solve their problem, helping them learn different things about themselves, and making the world a better place. Thank you very much. Anharana, back to you.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much, Joanthan. I know we have run up a little in terms of time. Apologies for that. Nimish, could you quickly launch the feedback poll? And I would request each one of you to please answer this feedback poll for us, because it is only your views and opinions which help us curate and bring to you better material every month. So I really appreciate you putting in your comments here. And Tushima is going to put the link for the CCU claim form. Please make sure that you fill it up and send it back to us within 24 hours of the end of this session, so that we will be able to then send you your CCU certificates pronto. And as we're doing this, as we're filling up the feedback form, and we do have Joanthan's permission now for staying back. Say, Joanthan, another 10 minutes?
Sure, happy to.
Okay, so we do have questions, and we will officially close the session after the feedback poll and the CCU form is taken into account. And we can have another extra 10 minutes to Joanthan. You could unmute yourself, get yourselves on camera, and ask him any question that you have, any query. And I've taken Joanthan's permission that he's going to be here for another 10 minutes. And we could do a quiet little sharing and networking with that. And I think Toshima is also there. If you have any further questions, Toshima, continue to curate that. And I will fail in my duty if I don't thank you, Joanthan. I think it was a wonderful session.
You're welcome.
I think you
Thank
can
for having me.
imagine the number of people who've been glued in since the beginning till the end. So you could imagine, even with a little bit of digressions, we have held fort. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
And you have given me enough openings to say these are the number of sessions that we want you back for. So
well, I appreciate that. Well, happy to come. This was a it's always fun, especially when there's an ability to lay out a foundation and go where the group is processing. Those are the sessions I enjoy the most. Is, we start with a core idea, and based on interacting with the group, we engage around, maybe a slightly different twist or a different set of steps to move things forward. So this was really a lot of fun today. I appreciate the opportunity.
So the CCO form link is already there. Tushima has posted it in the chat box. So please make a note of it. And with a heartfelt thanks to Joanthan, I think we can officially close this session. We really appreciate and thank each and every one of you to be here. And we look forward to you next month as well. We have our next session, which is already scheduled for the 23rd of Feb. That's also going to be another stellar session. So wait out for the information that is going to be coming your way shortly. With that, we can continue to be here for the next 10 minutes, and we can continue to share, network, and say whatever you have to say. And if Sushima also has few questions up her sleeve, then go ahead for it.
Yes, I have questions. Okay, so Joanthan, there were some questions that that came in about how we actually convey and explain the impact to the client during the sales process, or early on. So when we haven't got the client on board as yet, but when you're talking to them about your coaching, how do you then talk to them about what's the impact going to be?
A couple of things. Number one, I will say that there are several options available. Now, I never review my own self-critique about performance around the competencies or anything like that. I never review that with the client because the client doesn't care. But I will say very clearly, you have an opportunity to set goals, to develop targets for where you want your coaching to go, or want the coaching experience to go. And we will evaluate how much progress you make toward that. Now, it'll be your choice. Do you want to make progress about how much closer you are to the vision, or do we want to use a tracking strategy from where we started to where we end up in the course of that conversation? So I will communicate that second lens, the client outcome lens, very clearly, with two other wrinkles. Number one, say flat out, you and I will partner to develop the goals for the session. So we will work together to develop the goals for the session. So that's caveat number one. Caveat number two is we will develop a strategy together about how we'll measure the progress and who else will be involved in that measurement, because it's not something the coach and client can do by themselves. Third wrinkle to that is sometimes there's an assessment involved in using that tool, an outside third-party tool that might help with measuring progress or measuring change moving forward. But we didn't get into that at all today. So that's a topic for another day as well.
Thanks. And what are some of the watch outs or the don'ts when it comes to evaluating impact and progress?
Don't ever promise specific change. So the things that the client, I will ask the client regularly, consistently, hey, what do you have to have in order to feel like this was successful? As long as that comes out of the client's mouth, great. I will never say, Toshima, this is what I think we have to have. I don't ever do that. And that should not come out of your mouth. So that's number one. Number two, I don't love coaching situations where the client is assigned a coach. I don't think you can avoid those completely, but having a follow-up conversation where you say, hey, how are you opting into this engagement, I think is really pretty critical. Being able to say, what is it about this situation that makes you go, yes, I cannot wait to jump into this. That kind of thing, I think, is another critical piece to, you need to hear verbally from the client that they're fully bought in to the process.
Okay, thanks. And what's the difference in measuring the impact when it comes to individual clients versus where you have a client and you have the sponsor organization, so there are stakeholders involved as well?
one of the critical things that I think comes to life and it comes up in a situation like that is there's a difference between the stakeholder or the sponsor saying, I want this to happen. And when the stakeholder or sponsor says, I want this to happen and I want it to happen this way. I don't take on that second group if I can avoid it. Now I have a situation right now where I'm I have an engagement like that. And I didn't discover it until after the engagement had started. So we're executing toward a sponsor assigned goal with a sponsor assigned process, and I guess it's going okay. But neither the client nor I are especially happy because it feels like we're just checking boxes and following an assigned process. Now, in a situation where, so that would be a question that I would urge you to ask in a sponsor meeting. Hey, how clear are you on the goal? What do you want to see happen? Boom. That's one thing. Secondly, being how open are you to creative thinking about how to accomplish the particular goal? That's the second piece of the conversation that I think has to be discussed, has to be explored between coach and client about moving forward. Because if you've got a specific goal, but you can go any way that the client seems important to the client to accomplish it, that's kind of the dream scenario.
Thanks for that. I do have more questions, but if anyone wants to jump in and ask something.
I see
I think
Afshin has her hand up.
Afshin has a hand raised. Yeah.
Afshin, go ahead.
Go ahead, Afshin.
Thank you so much, Joanthan. This was really very insightful, and I really enjoyed it. My question's actually not regarding the three lenses, but something that I picked up on as you spoke about transferring your client from the 5 sessions to 7 years. And that's
only happened once. That's happened once.
No, but it's a challenge, and I'll tell you where I'm coming from, because currently one of exactly taking all of what you are saying, where you want them to pick up coaching skills, and that's where I'm at in my coaching journey, where the clients are becoming very self-sufficient because they're able to now, process things for themselves. They're able to identify goals for themselves and work towards it. So from going to that, and what I've currently done is after my 12 session package, you can sign up for a monthly, so you can come in once a month, or you can come in every quarter. But I'm beginning, and for those who are coming in every quarter, I myself want to say, just how you yourself said, maybe I'm not the right fit. I'm not saying I'm not the right fit. I'm actually saying, I don't think you need me here. That's a good problem.
Yeah, it is a great problem. It's exactly what we're aiming for.
But I want to be like you and transfer them for the 7 years.
Well, there's 2 things I'll throw out. Maybe 3 things. First is, I have noticed that long-term client engagements typically require multiple strategies. So there will be a period of time where we talk every 2 weeks or every month, and it might be 3 years where there's regular, consistent, ongoing interaction. But there's often then a break where there might be 6 months where we don't talk at all, or we talk quarterly for a year or something like that. That's natural. Long-term engagements, I find that to be very common. It happens regularly and consistently. The mindset that I want to challenge you to bring into that situation, Afshin, is how are you becoming a long-term trusted resource for that client, and then trusting them to tell you, hey, this would be most helpful.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing is sometimes in order to transfer from 100 days to a 2-year commitment or something like that, sometimes the critical question the coach has to ask, or gets to ask is probably a better way to say it, is how can you think bigger? Because often that's the difference maker in what you have to bring to the table. Is you just have an opportunity to challenge your client to think bigger about what's in front of them. And there are very few people in our lives that are the voice of thinking bigger and aiming at loftier goals. Most people, maybe this is an American thing, but I don't think so. Most people want to tell you, oh, you can't do that. You should think smaller. So one of the ways I think we invite our clients to aspire to a different level is to say, what would it look like if your goal was 3 steps higher than that? What would it look like if your goal was 20% bigger? So that's the second thing. Now, last thing out there, I'm going to tell you a quick story here. Is I have a client who's very extroverted and a verbal processor, and it occurred. I had a very similar thought to what you described. I had a very similar thought after 3 years of talking to this guy every month. I said to him, I don't think you need me, because we start our conversation and I'll say, what do you want to talk about today? And you go, oh, I want to talk about this, which leads me to believe that your next question is going to be this, your next question is going to be this. And 40 minutes later, I won't have said anything else. And he'll have come to 3 breakthroughs and built out a 3-step action plan. And I've done nothing. So I said to him, I don't really think you need me. So here's what I would urge you to try. And I'm saying this to my client. Put on your calendar a period of time coaching, then go into a room by yourself and pretend you're on the phone with me and see if it happens, see what happens. And he went, oh, I can't believe that would be a good idea, but you've got to be kidding. We can't do that. Which leads me to believe your next question is going to be, what's the risk of trying it? Which leads me to, and he talked himself into it. And I said, quite honestly, you'll save yourself thousands of dollars by doing that. You don't need me. And he said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. 6 months later, he called me up. He said, Joanthan, you're not going to believe this. And he was the quietest, calmest, most reserved I've ever heard him. You're not going to believe this. It worked great once. But for the last 5 months, I haven't made any progress. I think I need you. I said, okay. Now, what that taught me that I think speaks into what you're doing is that it's the relationship that drives. It's the connection person to person. And you may have to mix up your strategy to be a trusted resource and to invite your client to think bigger or think differently or approach their challenge from a slightly different perspective. That's what we do. And so that would be the seed I would plant with you, Afshin. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. And I want to share with you in August 2021, I was so embarrassed about it because I kept thinking, am I doing something wrong? But I celebrated a 1-year anniversary with a client, and then I was so upset about it that I forced him to go into take a break. And I said, no, you need to, we do need to have a break, because I don't know. I thought there was something wrong with my coaching thing. Promptly in December, he came back. And so, yeah. So thank you for that story, because that's what it was for me.
And that kind of thing, what I want when I think about developing my coaching practice, what I want is I want a group of people who are my regular, ongoing, long-term clients. And I have that.
Yeah.
I have that. I've got a small group of people that they're not all active at the moment, but they're engaged, and I have become a trusted resource.
Yeah.
The terms of how we work together, that's up to them. They can decide. I've got another group of folks that I'm not really a trusted resource, but I think I've helped them solve a problem or two, a challenge or two, and there's some good things that are happening. And then I have a group that I call former clients. And you know what those are. But that trusted resource group, I would love to tell you it's 50 names. It's not. It's between 20 and 30 probably. And I'm pretty convinced that that group will be with me as long as I want to coach in some way, shape, or form. And I would I would challenge you to say that that's the central piece of what we do as coaches, is we've got to have that group that they're going to be with you for the long haul, but the conditions, the circumstances might change a little bit over time. It might be every month for a while, then you don't talk to them for 9 months.
Yeah.
It's totally okay, because you know they're coming back. They're with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for being so patient with your response.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking great questions.
So I think with that, let's show Joanthan some love, and we will do that in the form of a word storm. So let's write down in the chat box, what is the one thing that you liked most today? Just quickly write it down in the chat. Don't press enter till I ask you to.
Appreciate that. Now,
So
I do see in the chat, people are wondering about keeping in touch. LinkedIn is a great strategy, or Twitter.
So just write one thing that you liked most about the session today. And at the count of 3, I would ask you to press enter. So if you're done, 3, 2, 1, enter. So there you are, Joanthan.
Thank you all very much. You're very kind. Very kind. You know, this has been an absolute delight, and I am very grateful for the invitation and the opportunity to have this direct, honest, transparent conversation about this skill set that we all value, that I think has as much power for the future of the world as any skill set there is. So thank you all for being as committed as you are, and for being a part of the wider coaching movement, because it matters. It makes a tremendous difference.